Hello everybody, my name is Dratnos, and today I'm going to make a video about Among Us. This is probably going to be the only the only video I will make about this game, but I figured it would be fun to make a video where I talk about, first of all, basic strategy in the game, and a little bit of an understanding of how the different maps work, how the different settings work, and what ones are good to use there, and then some kind of basic principles for suspicion and different situations you can get into commonly in the game. I want to preface this by saying that many people enjoy Among Us as being a very casual game, a game that they don't want to think too much about in kind of metagaming terms, in terms of like, what should you do in this general situation? And they'd rather just kind of approach every game individually and not think too much about what the implications are of like the number of players that are left and what will happen if this happens versus what will happen if this happens. So if that's you, you not only probably don't want to, you probably don't want to watch this video because it may actively hurt your enjoyment of the game rather than potentially increase it. But for a lot of people, I think that they would want to play this game, or they want to learn about how you could play the game this way, and this video might jumpstart you through, say, 50 games that would take to learn all these things. So let's start by describing what Among Us is. In Among Us, you're playing with a group of friends, ideally over Discord is the main way that I'm going to describe how you could do this. There are public lobbies as well, but they're a very chaotic and different environment where you chat in-game. And the usual play pattern of the game is that you get your group of people together, you all load into this map, and depending on the number of people, either one or two of you will be imposters. You'll be playing, if you're playing 4, 5, 6 people, or I think 7 people. 4, 5, or 6 people, you'll play one imposter, and I think on seven, usually the second imposter gets added. There are options to play with 3 imposters as well at like 10 people, but generally, most groups that I've seen play 2 imposters even at 10 people, because with 3 imposters the game ends very quickly and it's pretty imposter favored. But this is a game with a tremendous amount of settings that you can adjust to adjust the win rates of either side as your group is experiencing. So you've got these imposters in your team in the game, but only the imposters know they're imposters. Everybody else doesn't know everybody's role. So if you're an imposter, you will know that you're an imposter, you will know who else is an imposter, and then you'll know therefore that everybody else is not an imposter, they're crewmates. And the goal of the game is to finish up this taskbar if you're the crew. That is a way that the crew can win. The crew can also win if there are no imposters left alive. By contrast, the goal of imposters is to kill all of the crew, or at least enough crew that there are an equal number of imposters in the crew, because that's when the game ends, before the taskbar finishes filling up, and without getting voted off of the game themselves. So the basic loop of the game is you run around as imposters, you kill people. If a body gets reported, if you stumble upon a body, you have the option of reporting it. Both imposters and crewmates can use that report feature. And that will then bring you into a meeting where you can discuss who you think the imposter is with everybody. Generally, if you're playing over Discord, you're muted until you're in a meeting, and then you can talk, and then you mute again at the end of the meeting. So you don't talk while you're actually running around the ship. And once you're dead, you're muted for the rest of the game. Once you die, you do turn into a ghost. And ghosts still need to finish their tasks for the crew to win. And ghost imposters can still use the sabotage menu, which we'll talk about a little bit later. In addition to a meeting being called whenever you report a body, you can also call them by hitting this button here. Hit this button, you get the little emergency meeting thing, and you get the meeting here where, wow, all these dummies are voting already. What happens if I hit skip here? Are they voting for people? Oh, they're just voting at random. Okay. Very cool. This is what a meeting looks like. All right. I didn't even know that they had that in the free play mode. And yeah, if somebody gets a plurality of the votes, they will get ejected. Let's talk a little bit about exactly how that works, because actually I do think there's a little bit of confusion among newer players to the game about how exactly meetings do work. So I guess I can't call them meeting just yet. Basically, the way that it works is that you have to cast a vote for your vote to count, otherwise it will be completely ignored. So skipping the vote is not the same as not voting. If you choose not to vote, you basically weren't involved in the vote at all. Whereas if you choose to skip the vote, that increases the threshold that somebody needs. So if 4 people skip and 3 people vote for me, nobody gets ejected. If 2 people skip and 3 people vote for me, I'm getting ejected and I'm going to die. If 2 people vote for 2 different people, so if there's 2 votes for A and 2 votes for B, it's a tie, nobody gets ejected. If 2 people vote for me and 2 people vote to skip, it's also a tie, and nobody gets ejected. But if there's a situation like 2 people voting for 1 person, and then 1 person voting each for a bunch of different people, the person who got the 2 votes will get ejected. So that is the way it works with the meetings. All right, let's move on to talking a little bit about the game settings. So first of all, there are 3 different maps in the game. I'll talk about how each of them work and give my opinions towards the end of this video. But for now, let's talk instead about the other settings that are here. So if you're the lobby creator, you'll have access to all these different settings that you can look at. And you can look through and change these to your heart's content. So of course, there's the map that you can adjust. The number of imposters, there are some limits. For instance, it will not allow you to play 2 imposters on 6 people, for instance. That will only kick in at 7, I believe. But this is basically the maximum number of imposters based on the number of people that you have in the game that will be allowed. So you don't want to set this to 3 generally. You usually just set this to 2, and then it will automatically give you 1 imposter if you're below the amount where 2 would kick in. Confirm ejects is a setting that I prefer playing with this off, and the groups that I play with prefer playing with this off. It creates a little bit more of an interesting game, I think, where you don't know if the person you kicked off was an imposter or not. That is what this will change. And the problem I have with confirm ejects being on is that you get in these situations much more frequently where somebody's like, vote for them. If they weren't an imposter, vote for me, right? And you kind of have this, the fact that knowledge becomes public, it gets you into these situations where you do have these like 50-50 situation between 2 people who are both accusing each other, and you kick off one of them that you think is more suspicious, and then the other person gets kicked off immediately if that person wasn't an imposter. I personally don't find that pattern to be particularly fun. So one of my favorite things about confirm ejects being off is that you don't know that. It does have a side effect of in some situations, you don't know how much pressure you're under. Because, for instance, if there are 6 people left alive, the game is very safe if you have 1 imposter, and very dangerous if you have 2 imposters, for reasons that I'll discuss in a bit. And so you don't know which of those situations you're in. Again, I think that's a feature, not a bug, but you may disagree. The number of emergency meetings, you usually want to set this to 1. This is the number per person. So if you set this to higher than 1, you can get in the situation where the same person just keeps calling meetings, and that can really slow down the game. You set this to 0, then you can't call emergency meetings using the button, and I think that the button is a nice thing. The emergency cooldown is how much time there is between emergency meetings. You usually do want to set a number to this so you can't just keep spamming the emergency and voting people off that way. Like, you want to give the imposters a little bit of time to call an emergency instead, to call a sabotage instead. Discussion time, I prefer this just being at 0, just going straight into voting time. Basically, the way that a meeting works is it starts with the discussion time, and then it moves into voting time, and you can't actually vote until the discussion time is over. You can have this on if you have a problem in your group of people voting early, but generally I like to just have the whole time have the voting functionality if you want. There's not a big difference between 0 and 15 here. If you start going above this, sometimes you'll get in these meetings where everybody agrees that they're going to skip, for instance, and you just have to wait for discussion time to expire before voting time arrives. Player speed, 1 is the default setting that I would use for this. There's an alternative game mode you can play with very high speed that's really fun, called hide and seek. That is just a completely different game where you turn the rules on its head, and you can look up that. The basic idea is high player speed, low imposter vision. You can't call meetings, you can't report bodies, everybody can still talk over as long as they're alive in Discord, and you just are running around trying to finish your tasks while 1 imposter tries to kill everybody but doesn't know where they are, and you're all talking about who you think it might be, and then people's voices go quiet and you know they've been gotten. It's a pretty fun mode. But for default Among Us gameplay, I think player speed of 1 is good. The higher it gets, it kind of becomes a little bit less... Information becomes a little bit less valuable because somebody being in one spot of the map has less bearing over where they were 20 seconds ago, and that's a really important piece of information to have access to in a meeting. Crewmate vision, I recommend setting this actually to 0.5. I think the game is a little bit more fun when crewmates have a little bit harder time seeing what's going on, and imposter vision at 1.5, 1.75, 2. All this is effectively the same. I think once it's at 1.5, you basically see your whole screen anyways, so it doesn't really matter. I prefer these settings though. Kill cooldown, you're going to want to scale based on the number of people you have. This should be long in spots where you have a high number of imposters relative to crew, and short in places where you have a low number of imposters relative to crew. So for instance, at 6 people with 1 imposter, you want a short kill cooldown, because otherwise they have a really hard time, 1 imposter against 6 people, actually securing any kills. But once you get up to 7 people with 2 imposters, you want to bump that cooldown up to, again, to 45 seconds would be reasonable there, or a little bit less maybe, in order to make sure that you don't just have 2 people go on a quick killing spree and the game is over, right? So I'd recommend something, if you're doing a 10-person game, somewhere in the 25-second range, 20 to 25-second range, is where my group has kind of, or the groups that I've seen have kind of landed. I've played with a couple different groups, and I've spectated a lot of groups as well. And then as you start dropping people, you want to increase the kill cooldown until you get down to 6 people. And then once you get down to 6 people, you want to decrease it again all the way down, and then keep increasing it as you cut people below there. Kill distance, medium or short, create kind of different games. I like short. I think that it makes the imposters actually have to get right on top of somebody, and that can be that can create some fun moments, but it doesn't really matter too much there. Visual tasks is another one that I prefer being turned off. Visual tasks is in different maps, there are these tasks that will show an effect when they are happening. And I prefer this mode not being enabled because I prefer you not being able to just immediately say this person is guaranteed to not be an imposter because I saw them doing a task that only a crewmate could do, because imposters can't do tasks. This is something that I think that the game is better when imposters can pretend to be crew and pretend to be doing those tasks and aren't just kind of obligated to avoid that area, and you get these kind of knots of 3 people that are all hard clearing each other is the term, and that those games I think become a little bit less interesting than when there's some uncertainty about everybody. Even with visual tasks turned off, hard clears are still possible. So let's talk about the system of clearing that people have. In a meeting, you can say that somebody is cleared either of being an imposter or of doing a kill. And people mix these two things up a lot. In 2 imposter games, just because somebody has been with you the whole round and didn't kill anybody and didn't kill you, doesn't mean they're not an imposter, right? But it can if the right circumstances are met, right? So if you're in a 10-person game and you're playing with, this 20-second kill time, right, 25-second kill cooldown, and 20 seconds into the game or 30 seconds into the game, enough time that only 1 kill cooldown has come up, somebody reports a body and there are 2 bodies on the map, you can hard clear anybody who's been with you of being an imposter, right? Because there were 2 imposters that killed that round, and so the person following you around that didn't kill anybody wasn't an imposter, and you know that for sure. But if only 1 kill happened there, you don't know that anymore. You can say this person didn't do this kill, and maybe you'll be able to correctly identify somebody who did do that kill in that meeting, but it's a very different thing than giving them that kind of permanent, for the rest of the game, there's no chance this person is an imposter, clear. And that's a really important distinction that I think people fail to make. As somebody follows you around longer, particularly if you feel like they could have killed you easily, then you may want to kind of increase your level of trust that you're going to give them at that next meeting. But you have to be careful, because sometimes just, if somebody's been following you around all day and other people keep seeing you with them, it's really hard for them to kill you as an imposter, because when that meeting gets called, they'll be like, all right, who is with Dratnos today? And somebody's like, and 3 people are like, all right, well, I saw this person with them all day. And then that person's like, right? Then they've gotten detected for being an imposter there. So you have to be a little bit careful. Sometimes I think people bamboozle themselves into thinking that just because somebody has not killed them in a couple of secluded spaces in the map, that doesn't actually clear them of being an imposter, right? Especially if you've been seen with them. But even if you haven't, if you haven't been seen by anybody, the person who kills you is not going to have an alibi, right? The meeting is going to get called and everybody's going to be like, all right, who's seen other people today? And nobody is going to say they've seen that person. That is going to put a lot of suspicion on them. So you do have to be careful of that. That's my advice surrounding clearing a little bit. All right, common task, long task, and short tasks. The main thing here, I bumped this number up. You have to be careful with common tasks. So let's go into a game. I'll explain exactly what common tasks are, because this is something that very much trips up new players. All right, so common tasks are tasks that are given to the whole crew. Every single person in the crew has the task when it's a common task. An example of this is this admin swipe card task. Every single person in the game will have the task of going to the admin panel, pulling out their card, and then swiping it. A lot of people are pretty bad at this task. You want to make sure that it's not too fast and not too slow. So in order to do this, I'd recommend just keeping your mouse over the card the whole way through. That's my biggest piece of advice. As long as you just keep moving quickly, but make sure your mouse never goes in front of the card, that is the best way to make sure you just get that every time. That's a really hard task for a lot of players, actually, you'll find. Okay, so that's what common tasks are. The main thing that gets people in trouble is faking a common task as an imposter when it's not actually possible to have it, right? So if you have common tasks, if you don't have admin swipe card, right, and you see somebody else go here and stand here for 5 seconds and then leave, and you ask them what they were doing in the meeting and they say they were swiping their card, you know for sure they're an imposter, right? They were definitely faking that task because that wasn't an available task, right? When a common task, if you don't have a common task, nobody else can have it. And if you do have it, everybody else does have it. Some groups like to get around this by removing common tasks entirely, but still then people could accidentally fake it if they remember doing it in other games. So my advice mostly for this is you're probably just going to get bitten by this a couple times if you're a new imposter. An example of this, the swipe card. I think the wires on this map, the dropship keys on Polus, those are common mistakes, are trying to fake those tasks when they're not possible. So be careful with that. If you're an imposter, you will get a fake task list. So if you're unsure, you can always just go and make sure that you fake those tasks only. So if you are in free play here, you see you still have these fake tasks and you still have them on the map. So if you're really looking for something that you can 100% be sure you could have been assigned, you can just go and say you were doing these exact tasks. The problem is that this isn't actually that strong of a strategy because you often want to be in different parts of the map, right? As an imposter, you want to go and follow somebody and kill them, but you need to have an excuse for why you were there. So you do need to have the ability to make up a story about what you were doing and what your task list looked like. Some groups have house rules about not talking too much about these. And some groups, so another thing that can happen with tasks, for instance, is if I finish a task, this taskbar is going to go up. So if you see me standing here and then I walk away and the taskbar doesn't move, and then I say I did a task, there's a good chance that I didn't actually do one. Sorry, I think I hit my mic there. I don't know if you guys heard that, but if so, I'm really sorry. So some groups like to not talk about that and not have that be a thing. I think I prefer it when it's not too metagamed because you kind of create this incentive for everybody to stand here and wait for the taskbar to go up and then move, and it's kind of weird. Or wait for a ghost to finish a task and then move. I don't know. It's bizarre. So I prefer just not looking at this for that purpose and playing with people who agree not to do that. But your mileage might vary. You might play with a group that does that, so be careful. Okay, let's talk a little bit now about meeting strategy and when you have to vote people, and then we'll close out by a discussion of map by map theory. So meeting strategy. This is something that I think a lot of people really don't understand and can often make you look extremely suspicious if you misunderstand it and you're playing with people who do understand it. So let's talk about the different game situations. We'll build from kind of first principles here up to the different plays. So let's talk about one imposter games. If there's one imposter and one crewmate, the game is over, right? At that point, it's a game win, the imposters win. If there's one imposter and two crewmates left alive and the game is going, the imposter just needs to kill one person and win the game. So if you are in a situation where you are in a meeting and there's three people and one imposter among those two people, or among the three people, you have to vote. You have to vote on somebody there and you have to get it right. Otherwise, the imposter will win unless you can very quickly finish your tasks. The way that they will win, if you're a new imposter, here's how you do this, is you call reactor or whatever, you call a sabotage. The reactor's gonna melt down. Oh no, everybody needs to get over there. And you just kill somebody on the way there. Because there's an emergency going on, people can't use the button. They can't stop it. So you get over to the reactor, you just kill one person, the game ends, right? So because the game has that 100% win for an imposter's effectively in that spot, you need to get it right on three people. You need to vote, you can't skip, and you need to get it right on three people. The way three people meetings usually turn out is two people are hard accusing each other, and the third person has to pick. And that's usually how that goes on three people. So what does that mean for four-person meetings with one imposter? When you have four people in the game and one imposter, then if you get it wrong, you immediately turn the game into that game state of three people and one imposter, and the imposter immediately wins, right? So with four people in the game and one imposter, a bad vote, if you vote the wrong person off, the imposter wins 100% of the time. If you skip instead, the imposter needs to kill two people before the game ends, right? They need to kill two people successfully, which depending on the kill cooldown could take a minute, or it could take more or less depending on where people are, because of course a body could still get reported and you could vote them out on that three-person meeting. So generally, the barrier for suspicion to actually vote instead of skip on a four-person meeting is higher. How high it is depends a little bit on how likely you think it is the imposter can win without you getting another meeting on four people. And that will depend on your settings a little bit. I think I've seen some groups where they're still a little bit too hesitant. If you're like 90% sure somebody's an imposter, I think you probably should still vote them out on four people. But honestly, if you're like 80% sure, you probably are still better off skipping on four, especially if you're close to finishing on tasks for that reason, right? As you start getting above four people with one imposter, you start getting a little bit more wiggle room, right? Because the imposter is not going to be able to immediately end the game. And so you start getting to a situation where you can a little bit more reliably vote off suspicious people. There are actually a lot of benefits to voting off suspicious people. Say you're on like 6 people and there's one person who's very suspicious. If you vote that person off, that even if they're crew, that can actually be helpful for you. Because if you leave them alive, a good imposters should always try to kill people who are low suspicion or who are hard cleared, and should try and leave alive people who are high suspicion so that they can be framed for the kills, right? So if I'm very suspicious and I'm a crew person, I'm kind of okay with getting killed on 6 if I think there's only one imposter in there. I obviously would rather not. It's still better for me not to, but it's not a big deal. And it does mean that the crew isn't going to get into the situation where a wily imposter can go on a little bit of a killing spree down to 3 people, and they leave one crewmate and one very suspicious crewmate, and the other crewmate then votes out that suspicious crewmate instead. So voting on suspicious people on high numbers when you have a lot of wiggle room, it can be good even if you're not sure. Even if they're crew, it can be helpful to help you figure out what's going on, because when the game doesn't end, you know that they were safe, whereas as long as they stay alive, you never get that information. Let's talk about two imposter situations. So this is basically just double the numbers of the 1 imposter situations. If you're on 4 people in the game and 2 of them are imposters, the game instantly ends, right? So imposters win 100% of the time there. Realistically, if you get to 5 people and there's 2 imposters, either imposter has to kill 1 person and the game instantly ends. Imposters win basically 100% of the time there, unless they really flub it and somebody gets to call a meeting, which a good imposter will prevent that meeting from getting called by using a sabotage. Again, while a sabotage is active, a meeting can't be called, and you have a lot of time to do your kill. 6 people with 2 imposters is where we get to the game isn't for sure over if you're in a meeting. So if there's 6 people with 2 imposters and you get out of that meeting without skipping and nobody dies, the imposters can call an emergency, and then each of them can kill 1 person and the game ends. There's a little bit of a coordination problem here, because if one of them kills somebody and somebody else reports it before the other imposter can get a kill off, then you get to that 5-person meeting with 2 imposters, and the crew gets a chance to save themselves and to kill one of the imposters and bring the game to a state of 4 people with 1 imposter. But a good team of imposters will call an emergency in such a way that that's not super possible, right? You call the reactor, and then 1 imposter stays and guards the button or something, or both imposters go to reactor and you both kill as soon as your kill cooldown comes up, and that will be a good way to generally, there's not a 100% perfect way to do this, because any given strategy that you know for sure the imposters will do, you can generally play around, but they usually have a lot of good options to make sure that they each can secure a kill in that spot. So that's why if on 6 people, you're basically obligated to cast a vote as well, because if you get to a situation where there's 6 people with 2 imposters, the imposters have a very good chance of winning the game. Not 100%, but very, very, very high. It's a situation where if the imposters fail to win from there, they've messed up, probably. It's a mess up that can happen, but it's not something I would rely on as crew. So crew should always be trying to vote somebody off on 6 people. Now, because there's 6 people and 2 imposters, that means in order for crew to succeed, all 3 of the 4 crew, actually really all 4 of the 4 crew have to vote for the same person. If even one crew member defects and votes the same way as the imposters, then we get to a 3-3 tie vote, and the game will end because of that. So that means you have to be really, really careful as crew to make sure that you're not getting bamboozled, because the imposters win by bamboozling just 1 crew member from there. So you can use that to your advantage during the meeting. This is an instinct you'll develop, but you'll start to kind of see which people are kind of just willing to listen to anything in order to cast a vote on somebody, because they win if they get any of the crewmates. So things can get, you can start to get an idea for who an imposter is there. My big advice as well is just look at the votes. If you are in a game that is continuing, a game that doesn't just immediately end, and somebody gets voted off, usually it will be a 4-2 vote, right? 4 people will vote for that person because the crew have successfully identified them, and 2 people will defect. Whoever defected that you didn't vote off, whoever voted in a weird way, even if they weren't suspicious, even if you had no other reason to be suspect of them, that's probably your other imposter. That's a good chance there. Imposters can next level this by, if they identify that their fellow imposter is identified, quickly jumping on the bandwagon and voting for them if they believe that person will get voted off. It's kind of a next level strategy, and it is very effective, but it's also very risky, right? Because you do not want to be the person that casts the deciding vote to kill your imposter. That is a really bad feeling, but you can risk that to then build a lot of confidence in yourself and potentially throw somebody else under the bus too. All right, so because 6 people with 2 imposters is a really dangerous situation where the imposters almost always win, if you're on a vote with 7 people and 2 imposters, you need to be really sure before you vote one person off, right? Because if you vote a crew member off, then the imposters effectively win. So you should only be voting on 7 people if you're very confident in who the imposter is. As you start getting above 7, you again start building up more wiggle room. So again, it's the same dynamic we saw in the 1 imposter games, where you need to vote at a certain number, at a number 1 above that number, you need to be really, really sure before you vote, otherwise you should skip. And then as you start getting way above that number, you start getting more wiggle room to start casting votes that you're not sure about. All right, that's my theory about meetings and stuff. Let's talk a little bit about one common game situation, and then we'll talk about maps. I know I promised we'd get to maps, and now it's been 25 minutes. This is a long video, but I think it'll be interesting for people who like Among Us, or particularly who are interested in getting into it. So I hope you guys enjoy it anyway. Let's talk about one particular game situation that does come up. So this is a situation that I think is best described by a strategy guide written by Luis Scott Vargas. Luis Scott Vargas is a Magic the Gathering pro, and he wrote an article for a Magic the Gathering strategy website that I'll link in the description below, that is a very good basic strategy guide for Among Us as well. There's some overlap with the content that I've given here. There's a lot of stuff that he covers that I didn't, and a lot of stuff that I'm going to cover that he didn't. But one very, very good thing to learn about is the double kill situation, which he describes in pretty good detail in this guide, which is basically, if you're in a room with 2 other people, you're pretty safe, right? Because it's a rare situation where 2 imposters are going to follow around one person. You know, even if you kill that person, then both imposters will be in that part of the ship and will have been seen around there and will gain suspicion, and you only got 1 kill out of it. But if you're in a room with 3 other people, there could be 2 imposters in there, and the 2 imposters could be trying to kill at the same time. It's a very powerful play, and if they can get away with it, it is hugely, hugely valuable. A great way to potentially kill people who think they're sticking with a group and being safe and potentially were hard cleared earlier. But you can get into a situation that is called the failed double kill, and this is actually something that does come up a lot, which is where 4 people are in a room, 1 person does a kill, the other 1 person reports them, and then 2 people team up on the person who did the report. In that situation, normally you'd be like, okay, well, 2 people saw this person do the kill, and that is suspicious. That's enough for me. I'm going to vote for that person. But in this case, because there were 4 people in the room, you actually want to go with the 1 against the 2 here. Imposters can do a little bit of metagaming of this if they know about it, and they can quickly identify that they'll be discovered on this play. But it's rare that they'll do that. Generally, they will try to just say, oh, this person killed right in front of us. But because it's such a rare situation that an imposter would kill, in a room with 3 crew members, you get this spot where probably the most likely situation is actually 2 imposters were about to try and kill 2 people, and the crew that survived interrupted that, right? The imposters weren't coordinated because you can't talk, obviously. You can't coordinate that way. And that means that you want to consider the possibility that it was a failed double kill rather than the fact that, that there was just this 1 person who did the kill, and the imposters get to do their double kill anyways by just voting the person off. So look out for that. There's a lot of other great situations in this article. Again, I'll link it in the description. Would absolutely recommend this for people who like written words, descriptions of the game. That particular case, I think, is common enough that it's really, really worth knowing for everybody. All right, let's talk about map by map details. First of all, if you're new to the game, you're going to want to play with a map, either alt-tabbable, or if you play with 2 monitors, you want a map on your second monitor because you can't access it during meetings, and you're going to want to describe your day in terms of, I started in cafeteria, I went to do a task in weapons, I went down to O2 to clear the emergency, then I went to navigation and I saw the body there. I saw blue and green running to weapons from navigation earlier, right? You're going to want to make those kind of descriptions of your day, and so you want to have access to seeing the map. You can press tab in game if you're using the keyboard and mouse thing to look at it, and that can help you figure out where your tasks are. If you're an imposter, you also have the sabotage version of the map, but I would recommend having a image on your screen, and particularly you want an image that shows where the vents are in the map. Vents are ways that imposters can move from location to location, and having access to being able to see where those are on your map during meetings can be really valuable, because you can be like, well, there's a vent from cafeteria to weapons that could be how this kill was made, right? Or if somebody's like, well, I think this person vented from storage, you can be like, wait a second, there's not a vent in storage if you're looking at the map like that. So I'd recommend having one of those open in an alt tab. I don't think it's particularly cheaty, because it seems like this is information that you really should be able to just know during a meeting, and it's kind of weird you can't pull up the map during a meeting. So that's my advice for maps. Let's talk a little bit about the vents, because the vent systems in the different maps are different and differently useful. Imposters, you can go run into your vent, and each vent connects to a different set of vents. For instance, this vent up in weapons connects to the vent in navigation. This vent down here connects down to this spot here. Some vents are more useful than others. While you're in a vent, your kill cooldown does not progress. That's one thing to be aware of. So you can't just hide in vents after you kill and wait for it to come back. You have to go out somewhere in the ship. Now, vents that are particularly notable in this place. First of all, this vent here is within the range of this camera here. So be really careful about using this vent. I see a lot of people getting caught on this one. And this is otherwise it is a very useful vent though, because it gets admin, cafeteria, and out here. So this is a nice one. There's also a very common vent that is in medbay, linking medbay to security to electrical. This one is an extremely common one to be aware of. And then there are also ones from reactor to upper engine, reactor to lower engine that are also worth knowing about. So those, I think the most commonly used one is probably this triangle one in electrical medbay security. Generally, if you hear about deaths in these areas and then somebody uses as their alibi that they were in one of the other two and nobody else saw them, I'd maintain suspicion of them. What we have here is the admin table. This is a useful tool that allows you to see rooms that have people in them. When there's a body, that will also show up on this administrative table. And you can see when people leave rooms. You can also sometimes see when people vent between rooms, right? Like if you see somebody disappear from medbay and somebody immediately appear in security, good chance they were venting. But you might have also just seen somebody leave medbay at the same time that somebody else walked into security, because you don't see where people are in the hallways. You just see when they're in the rooms. All in all, though, I think this is one of the most useful tools that crew has, is the admin table. And imposters can use this too to go find where somebody's alone and then go kill them. So don't forget to use that as an imposter as well. All right, what else is notable about the Skeld? This is the most popular map, by the way, the Skeld. There are a few spots that I would say are particularly deadly on the Skeld. A couple of spots where you're very likely to die. Electrical, particularly up here. There are a couple of tasks up here, but other than that, there's no reason for people to go up here. So if you go up here, it's a very dangerous spot if you're not in a big group. Imposters can vent out, again, to either medbay or security. And it's a very kind of secluded location. I usually like to save my tasks for later up here, or for when a lights emergency gets called and you fix the lights, and then there will be a lot of people there maybe, and you can all go and do your tasks up here at the same time. Speaking of those emergencies, there's the lights emergency that I just talked about. That will make everybody basically unable to see anywhere except right around them. Really, really strong one, especially if you're playing with crewmate vision 0.5. If you play with higher crewmate vision than 0.5, lights is a lot less valuable because you get a wider range of view even when the lights are called. Reactor, 2 people need to come and press both sides of the reactor or the game ends. O2, people need to go and use the 2 O2 devices, one in O2 and one in admin, or the game ends. And communications will sabotage everybody so that they can't see what their tasks are or how close the game is to ending on tasks. That one is probably the least popular, but I think it can be useful. Normally, groups don't use this too much because the more you use this, the more people will get better against just knowing what their tasks are and being less disrupted by it. This room that I'm in right now is a security room, and being able to look at the cameras gives you this view of these 4 spots in the ship. You can see where all of them are because they say the names of nearby rooms. So this is medbay down here, cafeteria over here, engine over here, reactor security, which is the room that we're in right now, so you can see if somebody's walking in to kill you. You can't see if somebody's venting in to kill you, though, so that can still happen. And then up here we have the navigation area. There's that vent I was talking about that you can detect. You can see when people do that vent. O2 and weapons over there. And then this is the admin area, cafeteria, and storage on this one. This is the one that doesn't actually say where it is. One thing about these cameras is that while they are on, they have this red blinking light, so you will know if you are on camera. So be aware of that if you're an imposter. And also, you can use the fact that cameras were on to tell you about information in the game, right? Somebody can see you on cameras, and then you can, not only can they clear your story, but you can clear their story that they were on cameras if they saw you there, because they must have been. That was the only way they could have that information of you being in, this hallway or whatever, doing this task at a certain time. If you see the cameras were on, and then nobody admits to being on cameras, and there's a dead body that's unaccounted for, you get to a meeting and there's 2 dead bodies, there's a good chance the other person who died was on cameras, and the imposters came and ganked him, and then, you can throw suspicion on people who were in this area of this vent triangle, or just the left side of the ship in general. All right, that is, I guess, one final thing. Medbay is a pretty dangerous area, again, because of its proximity to this vent. There are some tasks here that are particularly useful. The medbay task in particular, even if visual tasks is turned off, you can hard clear somebody. If you try to scan, it will say waiting for their name if they are currently scanning, and you will know for sure that they're a crewmate. So this can be a useful tool for hard clears, even with visual tasks being off. But that's powerful, but it's a dangerous part of the room. If somebody walks in here with you and they kill you, there's a good chance your body's not getting found for a long time. and that person will be able to get away and establish an alibi. This task up here and these tasks over here, also pretty dangerous. Crewmates, particularly with low vision, will often just not see if there's bodies up there. So this is another area of the ship that's actually surprisingly dangerous. Anyways, that's my quick primer to the Skeld. Let's move on to talk about the other two maps real quick. All right, here's Mira HQ. This map is the second of 3, and it's the least popular, I think. It's my least favorite. It's shaped like this little Y thing. You all start off in the launch pad. I think the most notable things to know about Mira HQ is there's a couple of things that work differently than the other two maps here. These vent systems, I guess I need to turn myself into an imposter in order to be able to use them. Hang on. The vent system in Mira connects to the entire ship. So you go into one of these vents, and you can actually do a circuit all the way around the ship using the vents here. You can get to anywhere from anywhere with the vents. It's not like the Skeld or Polus, where vents are only connected to a few. By this system, you can, you have to do a couple of jumps, but you can get to any of the vents from any of the vents in here. However, you gotta be a little bit careful because Mira has this door log, and the door log will tell you when somebody crosses over one of these thresholds, right? You cross over that threshold, and it will tell you that person passed that sensor. So you can sometimes get caught in lies based on your venting if you weren't detected on the sensors that were appropriate to that. And it's a really powerful tool, but it can be really hard to read this and really hard to get information from this. A good player on Mira who knows how to use this can be really powerful, but I don't think it's particularly fun to like go through this long log and figure it. Like, I don't know. For me, I think that a lot of groups don't use this to its fullest, and it's kind of annoying that it's in the game because of how I think it's a little obnoxious to make good use of it. So I use it less than I would if I was playing for $1 million, for instance. This is the admin room in Mira. That's where you can see, of course, who's everywhere. It's the same functionality as the Skeld. Other than that, there's not any particularly... You don't have cameras in this place. You just have the door log instead. And the sabotages for Imposter are the same as they are in the Skeld, right? You have O2, lights, reactor, and comms. Like the Skeld, comms will turn off the comms room as well. So in the Skeld, I didn't cover this, but turning off comms will turn off cameras. And in Mira HQ, turning off comms, sabotaging comms, I believe will turn off the door log as well, yeah. So the comms will be disabled here. So you can use this as an imposter, potentially, if you know you're going to get caught by one of these effects. On the Skeld, you can use it to do a kill on camera or event on camera as well. There are no doors to be closed by the imposters here like there are on the other maps as well. Another thing worth noting. And this decontamination area, you have to wait at either side before you can get all the way through, which can be pretty annoying. And you need to do this to go and turn off the reactor emergency if that gets called up here. So that's Mira HQ. I don't want to talk too much about this because this one is not as popular of a map. I would recommend that you play this less than the other two. I think that the other two maps both have a lot of great games on them, and this map I think has the highest percentage of games that aren't as fun in my experience. Let's move on to talk about the third map, Polus. Polus is a map that I've found to be, I think, one of the best for long games, particularly as you start getting more experienced as a group. I think the Skeld is a good place to learn the game, but Polus has a lot of nice abilities for skilled imposters to still kill skilled crew because of how big the map is and how much space there is around there. And that, I think, really adds to the game experience once you start getting a lot of games under your belt. So what are the unique features of Polus? Polus has the Skeld-style vent system where the vents don't connect everywhere, but this vent in particular, from laboratory all the way down to admin, this can get you a lot of distance covered really quickly. So this is one of the best vents to know about. Again, I'd recommend having a map with all the vents. I might include a set of 3 in the description of this video to refer to see where all the maps are, but that little shape in particular is a really good way to do a kill in one of these areas, vent all the way across the map, and quickly get seen before the body gets called in a spot where you couldn't have... I couldn't have been there. I was all the way in lab, right? Of course, good players will be like, well, you could have vented, and then you could be like, no, I didn't do that. And you get into a nice little unclear area, but it still is less suspicious than you being in the area of the kill. Okay, other than that, Polus has the specimen room, which is really out of the way and has these decontamination chambers like Mira on both sides. Specimen room is a good place to secure a kill if nobody knows you were there. There's a good chance nobody will walk into the body for a while. But, if somebody sees you walking with somebody else's specimen room and then somebody dies there, you're going to have a lot of suspicion thrown on you. So you got to be careful with the specimen as both imposters and crew, but it can be really valuable. Again, it's a good place to save tasks for later if you're not sure you can get there safely, and do them as either your ghost tasks once you die or your last tasks to win the game. Other than that, the features of this map, you all start off up in this dropship. Very quickly, I recommend in most games, most of the time teams will just finish their task here if they have it, and then everybody will leave the dropship together, because once you've done that, the dropship becomes a pretty dangerous place. It's really out of the way, and it's likely that a body in there won't get detected for a while. Storage, similarly, is a pretty dangerous place to be. It's pretty easy for an imposter to kill here, and then they can even vent out and vent fairly far away quickly as well. And so storage is another place where bodies don't get detected for a while. Same with communications and weapons, these kind of rooms. You can lock doors on people in these rooms, and then in order to open them, they need to actually click through the things to the left. And that can make it hard. Usually you don't want to lock somebody in a room with you and then kill them, because you have to then get out of the room. Storage is a little bit of an exception because you can vent out, but comms and weapons, you can't vent out of these rooms, so you don't want to lock somebody in with you and then kill them. Usually you just want to like leave a body in there and then lock the doors, or just randomly lock all the doors around the map, even when you're not there, just to cause confusion and build suspicion between the crew. Again, I think the strongest sabotage on this map, particularly if you're playing with low crewmate vision, is lights, but there's also comms, which will disable the cameras. And there's reactor, which will win the game if it goes off. The reactor are cleared up here and up here. The reactor is a very common way to checkmate the crew if you're in that situation where you're, 6 imposters, or 6 crewmates, 6 players and 2 imposters, or 3 players and 1 imposter. Reactor is a really good way to call a meeting that will end those games, or an event that will end those games, because you just go to one of the sides and kill whoever comes there, and your other imposter friend does it for the other side, and you just win for sure by doing that. All right, this map also has cameras, a little bit different than the Skeld cameras, where you have to hop between them like this, and you're not seeing all of them at the same time. Again, they flash while they're on, and there's 6 of them. And there are some that are in pretty potent places where you can get a lot of idea about where people are. Again, there are some vents that are on camera as well, so you got to be careful of that. As imposter, this one, for instance, you can see bodies. A lot of bodies will show up in this water room south of O2, so that's a good place to have view of. But generally, you'll see people kind of switching between these quickly and looking to see when they actually see somebody on them. There's this vent. Okay, notable vent. This vent here brings you down. You can secure a kill here really quick and then get out of there nice if somebody's at in the tree area, and then you can get into and out of the whole place to this vent really quickly. So there can be one thing that can be good, for instance, is you're alone in O2 with somebody. You can call the lights emergency, kill somebody at the tree, vent out this way, run this way, and then if you're fast enough, you can still be one of the first people to respond to the O2 emergency and clear suspicion of yourself that way. You can be like, look, I came from storage and I ran into these other 2 people who were coming from lab, and I got there on time. And it's going to be hard. Obviously there's a way to do that without, while still having been in O2 and done that kill, but it's something that will build trust for you, right? It's a very plausible story you can build for yourself that makes you not suspicious. It's not a hard clear or anything, but it makes it so that it's harder for you to get voted off for that kill that happened down in O2. It's a good way vents are really good for that. Killing somebody and building distance, or using it to see if there's somebody alone, killing them quickly, and then again building distance really quickly from the body, and getting to a spot where you can have a plausible alibi. All right, that is, I think, most of the tips I have for Among Us. I didn't really get into a couple of other discussions here of concepts like the self-report, and when to use that as an imposter versus when you might expect somebody who's reported a kill to be doing it. That was something I was maybe going to talk about, but we're like 40 minutes into the video now, so I think I've already gone a little long. I hope you've enjoyed this extremely long-winded, I guess, discussion of everything that I could think of to tell you about Among Us. I hope there was something in here for everybody. I hope that if you didn't play Among Us already, you're now maybe interested in doing so, and you know a little bit that will get you over the hurdle of your first few games. Particularly playing with experienced players when you're inexperienced can be really rough. So I wanted to make this video to really help you make that transition. And if you're an experienced player, I think there's still maybe something in here that you learned from this video, in which case I hope that's true. And if there's something that I didn't mention that you think is a good piece of strategy advice, put it in the comments below. Again, a lot of groups play this game very differently than each other, depending on the settings, depending on the kind of customs and metagame of the group you play with. Some of the things I said could completely not apply to you, or could be the complete opposite of what is a good strategy for the metagame that's developed for you. And that's okay. That's how this is supposed to work. That's how social deduction games work. And The thing that I'm most excited about Among Us becoming this popular is that hopefully the social deduction genre really explodes in the coming years in the way that we've seen like battle royales and auto battlers blow up after one big hit. Because I think this style of game is awesome. Board games or tabletop games that have been social deduction games have been some of my favorite games of all time. Games like Avalon, The Resistance, really good games. I'd recommend playing if you're ever with 8 people in person, if they ever let us do that again. And you want to play a fun game for a night, I would really recommend those games. Very popular games like Werewolf or Mafia also follow similar social deduction, genre tropes. But this is the first time I've seen it really explode in digital space using Discord to communicate and stuff. And I think it's really, really awesome to see. So I hope to bring everybody into this kind of game as a fun thing to do. Don't burn out on it too much, but there's kind of infinite replayability just because you're playing with people, and a huge part of the game is just what other people are thinking, and that is an infinite trove that can be mined. So that's the video. Let me know what you think. Check out my Twitch stream. I usually stream World of Warcraft, but I'm going to be streaming Path of Exile, I think, for the next couple weeks. Maybe some Among Us. I don't know. So do that. Twitch.tv/ratnos. Thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.